Wow. Okay. So, pardon the much more casual dress, but it's hotter than a snake in a wagon, right? So this week, my comments and discussions are such that I would like to be able to blame someone for misuse of the English language, but the fact is that all language is a constantly evolving means of communication. And in the case of the English language, it's basically a language that hangs out in a back alley and bashes people over the head and rummages through their pockets for spare vowels. But in this particular instance, we're all guilty of altering the language we use. Generally, that's called slang. But in this particular instance, the word is troll. Troll is a verb meaning to trail along a baited hook for fishing. And in the case of the internet, it's pretty similar. It's casually strolling through discussions and then making snide comments in the hopes of baiting someone into an argument. It's so in that way it's similar to fishing, but they're definitely going to be throwing back what they catch. And a troll is a person on the internet who makes snide comments with the intent of upsetting people. Which, okay, one who trolls. But a troll is also a magical creature, much like the fairies we discussed last time. And oddly, they fit into the social agenda. Because, let's see, trolls. Well, often they are misrepresented as other creatures, such as giants that live in the forest and eat wandering random people. Yet, that's not, if you look at the history of our cultural mythologies, that wouldn't be a troll. Trolls, while they could be carnivorous, and they could actually eat humans, are not really giant forest dwellers. The most common, as we are usually familiar with, would be trolls that live under bridges and wait for the billy goat's gruff, and the three billy goats gruff, wandering over the bridge, and the next one's bigger, so the troll waits until the last billy goat gruff gets there and knocks the troll off the bridge. Or they wait for people to cross and are like, hey, pay the troll and you can cross the bridge. Oddly, this is very much like a group of people in modern society. Homeless people, who you can often find living under bridges and hanging out at corner intersections near the bridge and with a sign saying, please give me some money, I need to eat. Much like the trolls from ancient story times. So, do trolls exist? Well, how do you know those homeless people aren't trolls? How do we know that the trolls in the ancient fairy tales were not homeless people? I mean, they kind of meet the similar criteria. They live under bridges, really scruffy looking, try to panhandle from passersby. So, yeah, ancient trolls could be homeless people, or if there were trolls in the modern world, they could be the homeless people that we attempt to ignore every day. So, here's the thought then. If trolls are homeless people, how would that apply? Let's see. In ancient times and olden fairy tale times, could you just give a house to a troll? Well, that wouldn't really work. Because what makes you think that the troll wants to go live in a house? That would involve the troll having to convert to the societal norms of the village where the village closest to where it resides. Because generally speaking, can't think of any fairy tales where the troll actually lived in town. They lived out in the woods. By modern day standards, homeless people who live under bridges may actually live in town or near town. But we have a lot more people, and there's a lot less open space for people to just go live in the woods. Although that does still technically happen. But, so you couldn't give a troll a home because they might not want to conform to the societal norms, or might not be able to conform to the societal norms. Similarly, with the modern homeless population, they may be unwilling or unable to comply and submit to the societal norms that are expected in order to just give them housing. Now, Dr. Ben Carson, when he was put in charge of, he was put in charge of trying to figure out how to do something about homeless people by President Trump. I want to say it was the Housing and Urban Development, but I'm probably mistaken. And in an interview, he was asked, well, what are you going to do to get the people off the street and into houses? And he responded basically that it's not that simple. We have to assess each individual's needs in order to determine why they're homeless. Similarly to those trolls we were talking about, you can't just say, hey, troll, live in this village. Live in a house like a normal person, because they were a troll. Why were they a troll? Well, see, that one's a little bit easier because we just know that they're trolls. But then, why were trolls living under bridges? Is there something inherently wrong with them? Or were they stereotyped for being of a different ethnicity than the village people? Based on our our fairy tales, we can just generally say that trolls were not people. They weren't humans. Now, the interesting part to that is that if you look further and deeper into tales of trolls and histories of fairy tales, the Nordic people, the ones that we generally refer to as Vikings, but come on, Scandinavians are still there, right? They're not out of Viking. But whatevs, okay? According to Scandinavian lore, or Nordic lore, I'm not trying to pick on the Scandinavians per se, trolls lived to the east. And if you really kind of like map out the stories, and using some of the Eddas of Nordic lore, the trolls one might generally be able to identify as, well, easily put as Russian. Okay, that's just the easy way to say it. However, according to Nordic histories, tales, Eddas, Russians, as we know them, like Moscow and Moscow and West, St. Petersburg, Belarus, the Ukraine. Like, sorry, folks, and it's like, oh, Russia's invading the Ukraine. Well, the Ukraine was kind of Russian at one point in history. Hey, they're not getting into it. We're not getting into it because the Ukrainians are trying to be Ukrainian, and some Russians are trying to say we want that stuff. That's not a point for the trolls. However, the trolls were to the east. So we would basically be including the Asiatic Russian groups, Mongolians, people who generally did not look like Scandinavians, didn't speak like Scandinavians, could just be Eastern European. We don't know, because European history is really poorly trying to be pieced together. But what we can determine is that those trolls evolved across story time to be people who did not live in villages, who generally lived under bridges or in caves, and may or may not accost wandering travelers, which is very much like our modern homeless population. They journey wherever they may go. They don't conform to our societal norms. They don't generally look the way we expect a functional person in our society to look. As for me, honestly, I will say this, and I don't care if people say I'm stereotyping. When I see homeless folk who are essentially wearing all of their clothes so that they can carry them around, and like today it's hotter than a snake in a wagon rut, and dude's got like 2 shirts, a sweatshirt, and a jacket because it's the easiest way to carry all of his stuff. It's like, can somebody get this guy some ice water? So how do we deal with homeless people? How do we deal with trolls? Well, in the olden days, they dealt with them the same way, which was run them off until they don't live in your village. Well, a lot of things they did in the old times we do not look on favorably anymore. So running people out of town for not looking or acting the way that we think they should is not something that we approve of. So we make shelters. And actually, the most difficult part is that we as a society relegate the care and well-being of our homeless population to state and government agencies and say, oh, well, we pay taxes, make them take care of it. They'll do it. They will take care of them. Well, who is they? Oh, they is the government. Who? Who in the government? I mean, the U.S. military is part of the government. The Office of Personnel Management, which that's like the HR department, the people who who arrange the hiring and firing and paychecks for for government employees. They're part of the government. So the Department of Health and Human Services, which we assume is the one who is supposed to manage the issue, and generally speaking, that's who homeless people fall under. So we're able to at least sort out, do we have an applicable Health and Human Services department to take care of whatever homeless issue we have? Oddly, one city that I lived in once upon a time said, the local representatives, like the mayor's office, the people at the water department, said, "Oh, we don't have any homeless people here." And yet there was a local charity that that was constantly trying to raise funds because there were over 1,000 homeless people in that community, but they weren't recognized as existing by the government. So when we say, "Oh, the government will take care of it," are we sure? Do we want to bother ourselves to look into it? Or do we want to just accept the homeless guy living under your front porch because, well, let's face it, you can't run him off all the time? I do not have a homeless person living under my front porch. I don't have a front porch. But that's not the point. So then we say they will take care of them. Them being them, the homeless people? Okay, because they, the government, will take care of them, the government. So we've already discussed the will they, do they, how do they. So why do we identify them as them? I mean, that's honestly, it's the easiest way. Oh, well, they're them. But if it was your cousin, would you refer to them as them? Would you let your cousin be homeless? That's kind of a question, because see, when you turn all of these people into them who are being taken care of by they, then we as a society can just write the whole thing off and ignore it. And then we have trolls roaming around in the cornfields. So it's important for us to make sure that if we want to care about our environment being where we live, not just the trees and the air, but the space that we reside in, then we have to actually ask ourselves, who is taking care of these issues that we don't want to be having happen, like homeless people wandering through our cornfields, the troll hunters going out to rehabilitate the trolls. Y'all have a great day.